Welcome, Carm Capriato, the Service Aftermarkets podcast pioneer with the gold standard of aftermarket business podcasts. Join me for Aftermarket Insights as we advance the aftermarket. And as always, know that you'll learn just one thing. Find us on your favorite podcast listening app and remarkableresults.biz or on my YouTube channel. Hey everybody, Carm Capriato Town Hall Academy here at the MAX Mobile Air Climate Systems Conference, 45th year. End of January, early February here. Thanks to NASTAF for having us here. Honeywell, Honeywell, there's people here from Honeywell. And Cora as sponsors for us here this year. And we so appreciate you. Hey, a couple of words from our great sponsors. Hey, Carm here, and I hope to see you at the 22nd Annual TST Big Event, Saturday, March 29th, 2025. This very comprehensive one-day seminar will feature trainers Bill Weaver from NAPA Autotech Training, Josh Weaver from Dorman Training, and Eric Ziegler from WTI. This all-day event will be at the Westchester Marriott in Tarryton, New York. Sign up at tstseminars.org. I'll be there, and I'm going to present the keynote, The Rise of the Mechanical and Technology Specialist. Great education, breakfast and lunch, and a ton of learning. tstseminars.org, Saturday, March 29th, 2025. You know, NAPA Tracks will move your shop into the SMS Fast Lane with on-site training and 6-day-a-week support and even local representation. Where else do you get that? Find NAPA Tracks on the web at napatracs.com. And are you ready to optimize training with today's class? We'll roll out a training plan for your automotive shop. In just 5 minutes a day, boost knowledge, retention, and improve team performance. Start seeing results today, even with gamification. Join your peers at today'sclass.com. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thanks. Hey, welcome back. We have a heck of a great panel. And yes, they're from Honeywell. Wow, aviation, energy, automation, 100+ years.
Honeywell's a big conglomerate.
Man, are they ever. And, you know, we hear about Honeywell all the time, but I'm not sure any of us normal folk really have an idea of all the great things Honeywell does. With me is Curtis Vincent and MaryJo Vandenbrink. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey.
Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Do I have a bio and a half on each of you? MaryJo, let me start with you. I think you worked for AC compressor companies and GM and Chrysler.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yes. I started out at Denso and worked at Sandon, both compressor suppliers. And then I moved to General Motors and Stellantis. And that whole career was all AC compressors.
And you've been here at Honeywell for 3 years.
3 years.
Having fun?
Very much.
Perfect. Curtis, GM for 37 years, and then you retired.
Yeah, 37 years. So started when I was 6. No, I'm kidding. But I did start when I was 18. It was started with a co-op program. And 37 years, all in HVAC. The whole time. So that was great. And then finally retired. And when I finished my career, I had led GM's transition from the old refrigerant to our refrigerant, the Honeywell refrigerant. 1234YF just rolls off the tongue that easily. No, I'm kidding, obviously. And Honeywell hired me. And so it's been a great 5 years with them, and I'm enjoying that.
Good for you. We're so happy to have you here. There's a lot of podcast episodes that we've done here, and there's this continuing theme. The themes are thermal management. I've been really shocked by it. That's all I've heard. There's no air conditioning words being used anymore, even though you may be driving an ICE engine car with a traditional AC unit, but we can still say that if we need to get it fixed, you need to go to a thermal management specialist to get it done, because thermal management is describing our future.
That's absolutely right. It's become more and more true over time. People used to just talk about air conditioning, but today thermal management systems do a lot more. Right?
And thermal management really helps define where we're headed with EVs. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
So with EVs, you have a little bit more than air conditioning. We also have to cool the battery and condition the battery, and also cool electronics and the compressor as well.
Imagine that.
A lot of stuff there.
Put a blanket around my battery. Think about that. Cool down the electric motors.
Yes.
Who would have thought?
Well, it's hard to say, right? It's the way things are, though, today, right? With lithium-ion batteries, they want to operate in a temperature range about like people do, right? They want to be in that range. But they do give off heat when they work, right? And so you have to take a lot of energy out. So that's part of thermal management systems. It's a big part now with EVs.
So we're heating our vehicles in the morning in Buffalo, which is where we're from. It's been a chilly winter, by the way.
Yes.
Very much so.
And are we heating it from the heat from the battery, or is it just coming from the heat pump?
The heat pump needs a source, right, to make the heat pump work, right? A heat source. And that can be the battery. That could be the air outside. That's what a heat pump generally does, right, is take air from the outside, takes energy from the air. And it could be other sources, could be the motors and inverters, right, which are cooled by this thermal management system. But it needs a heat source to actually operate. And then it's brought to you through the heat pump.
Are you the EV expert here, MaryJo?
Bert is the EV expert.
You are? When EVs came out, when the Tesla, do you own a Tesla maybe?
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
I've driven them.
What do you see for our future? Obviously, we don't have, I'm not sure where the mandates are coming from and, you know, how many EVs are going to be made by all of our OE suppliers. But I am being romanced. I want to own a Tesla. Don't ask me why, but I do. And it may be just to figure it out, to learn about it, maybe have some fun, put it in, what's it mode called? Track mode? Mm-hmm. I don't know. I hear you have brain fade when that happens.
But EVs are very fun to drive, though. Yes.
See, there you go. Yeah. They're fun to drive because there's that, right?
A lot of
It's
torque.
immediate.
Yep.
Yes.
If we end up, all of us have a choice and not a mandate to get it, and I'm at this point where don't tell me what I have to buy, but I want to be romanced by something and to get it and to buy it. So I think the warning to our great automotive aftermarket service industry is things are going to happen, and you got to pay attention to these trends. That's why Max is so important.
That's absolutely true. Like I said, the technicians of old, we still have refrigeration systems, but they're way more complicated. Just as an example.
It's not your father's Oldsmobile anymore.
No, it's not, unfortunately. But it adds another dimension to the technician's environment. But if you think about it, right, how would you work on an air conditioning system? You might take the charge out or put charge in or whatever. And you do that with the engine off because you're working under hood. And then run inside the car, start it up, feel the air. Well, on an EV system, the first thing you do is disconnect the battery, right? Nobody wants a high voltage problem, right? So you start with that, and then you have to work through what the problems are. If you want to test it out, you got to reconnect the battery, and that's not a trivial thing, right?
Right.
So it's another big part, right, of what thermal management systems will entail. It's not for the faint of heart.
Are you guys doing training in this department, or are you giving it to other people to do?
We're not actually the EV people. We certainly give training on refrigerants and how refrigerants can be used in heat pumps.
Okay.
Right?
All right, good. Let's go there. And by the way, before we get there, I think one of our next talking points was about retrofits. I've heard a lot here, and we've done some episodes on it. And look, there are different views inside of our industry from everybody. And the beauty of me being here and taking a topic called retrofits, and I've done 2 other episodes, not totally on retrofits, but having a discussion is to hear your particular take, MaryJo and Curtis, on this whole retrofit thing. How are we going to go by it? What are we going to do?
Yeah. So from Honeywell's standpoint, we are proposing to use 1234YF as a retrofit solution for 134A in older vehicles. And to do that, we have to manage a few different items, one being the fittings. Fittings are unique for each refrigerant. So we are developing fittings with some suppliers.
Yeah.
The other part of it is the oil. We will not have to change the full amount of oil. We would just have to put a slight additive into the oil. And then the third part is a label. Labels are nice and easy.
Well, that seems to be easy. And presto, put in the 1234YF after the fittings get done.
And after you've pulled out any existing 134A.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a difficult job to do, but maybe your listeners want a little background on why we're doing that. 134A is a very high global warming gas, right? It has a GWP, what we call a global warming potential, of 1,430. YF has a GWP of less than 1. That's big. When I worked in the auto industry, if you could improve something by 5%, 10%, right? You can't take 50% of the weight out of a car, but those are great things. We improved the GWP of the refrigerant by 4 orders of magnitude. That's unbelievable. You don't make those kind of gains in a car. So it's a huge impact for the environment and really important.
What's the deal, MaryJo, about the flammability of it? I mean, is that really a consumer issue today?
No,
It's
it's
not.
not. No,
Okay.
there are 220 million vehicles, or since,
221 million that have 1, 2, 3, 4
Yes.
YF.
yes.
And so why do some shops not even have that machine yet?
It hasn't come to them through the service center. So if people are still taking it to the dealership, right, it takes a little while to get through the normal service procedure, the warranty period, right, of a vehicle before they will start to come to the
That's a
shop.
lot of vehicles.
Yes, a lot of vehicles.
And that's in Europe and in the U.S., right?
Oh, okay.
It's huge.
This is a
Globally.
global number? Oh,
Yes,
okay.
it's a global
I'm
number.
sorry. Okay. All right. Global.
But about
That
half of that is really in the U.S.
makes
so-
more sense. 100 million, huh?
Yeah. How old's your car you drive?
I think it's 11 or 12 years old.
It could have it in it. That's right around the time
Or,
frame that
or
we changed.
10 or 11. I don't remember. I don't
Some
want to
cars
get
started to change at that time.
Yeah, I don't want to get rid of it. I love my car. Don't ask me why. I love it.
You wanted the Tesla. I'm kidding.
And I'm waiting on the day that the four wheels go, "Oh," and then I say, oh, it's time for a Tesla.
There you go.
Well, do you know what refrigerant your car has in it?
No.
Well, maybe it's time to switch it over to YF.
You think it's 134A?
When,
It might be,
when we
yeah.
get there.
Yeah, we actually do have to go through a what's called SNAP approval with the EPA for this, and that process is ongoing. So any new application has to do that. But yeah, but someday, right, if you keep it, you will likely do it.
I don't know why. I don't know. Or that I've not been curious about, it's like, what kind of refrigerant does my car have? It's like, wait a minute, Carm, get a life.
It's like we talked, right? 85 years, right? Probably since the first refrigeration systems, were installed in cars. I think the 1935 Packard was the first one to have that.
Was it R12?
It was R12, yes. Yeah.
Damn.
First factory installed, right? R12. We've made, since that time, 2 changes.
In 85 years.
Yes.
R12 to 134A to 1234. And now the discussion is, and you guys are probably working on this heavily in the labs, there's a million options.
Right.
444, it was C90, I think, the propane option.
R290.
R2. It's amazing to hear the guests that I've had on and walk the show floor and talk to some people at the cocktails last night about all this. There's almost more changes going on in the last 85 minutes than in the 85 years, right?
That's absolutely true. And it's pretty astounding. And it started with really electric vehicles. That's the only reason that we're really looking at this. And because electric vehicles got a bad reputation for using a lot of electricity in the wintertime, right, to heat the vehicle.
Yeah.
And that was before, these aren't early electric vehicles that were used, but it was before heat pumps.
Yeah.
And so consequently, there's been a search for the perfect refrigerant to work in heat pumps, but also work in AC.
Efficient.
Right, exactly.
Got it.
Yep.
And so that's why, are we going to experiment or are we going to, as an industry, decide on one?
That won't happen. There are too many choices.
God,
right now.
that is just wild. Right. And that just makes the job of the thermal management specialist even more critical.
Yes.
Absolutely true.
And there's probably going to be more equipment necessary. And I don't know if we can find a machine that's going to be able to recycle everything. No, you see?
Yep.
So we shouldn't be afraid of these technological advancements, but we just need to pay attention to them.
The reason that we've only had 3 so far, right, is that the industry relies on standardization, right, to bring costs down and to have good systems for customers, right? That's really the thing. We're moving off into the zone where there are too many choices. And it's going to be costly. It's going to be difficult for a while, but standardization is what the industry will want to get back to ultimately for that.
Does SAE have anything to do with standardization?
Sure. That's what they do. They write standards.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're both members of SAE on the committees for that.
Good. Yeah. Do you see, MaryJo, that it may take 5 years to find a standard for a new refrigerant or not?
Well, we are already 2 years into this process.
Maybe 3 years into the process, right?
It's probably going to take 5 in total.
Least.
But it's the creative geniuses that sit inside of a company like Honeywell that are pushing the boundaries of what can be.
Right. I don't want to say creative geniuses, but there's a lot of really good people working on this project, right, to try and, again, find a really good refrigerant that does everything well. And it's not just the refrigerant, it's also the system, right? There's an optimization that has to be done with every refrigerant. The R290 you talked about, it's completely different than any other system for heat pumps. We're faced with, not only different refrigerants, but different systems. It gets even more complicated. All the more reason that we're going to need good, solid, well-trained, and professional technicians. There's no question that that is coming.
Yeah. Hey, let's face it. Your shop management system is the single most important tool in your shop, period. NAPA Trax has made selecting the right shop management system easy by offering the industry's best, most comprehensive SMS. Now, it all starts when a local representative meets with you to learn about your business and how you need to run it. After all, it's your shop, so it's your choice, and having local representation is a huge plus. Customizing Trax to your business, whether you're a one-person shop or a large multi-bay or multi-location company, a representative consults with you to help optimize your shop's workflow, efficiency, and profitability. Trax always has the flexibility to do business how you need to do it, which means it can also grow as your business grows. And unlike the other guys, will be there for you after installation with the best training and support in the business. Yes, a learning management system tailored to each role in your company. Simply put, Trax was designed and built for shop owners just like you. Visit us on the web at NAPA Trax, that's NAPATRACS.com. Transform your team with today's class, where automotive training is easy, quick, and fun. Just 5 minutes a day on our app can eliminate hours of looking up forgotten information later. It's perfect for technicians, advisors, and managers alike. Keep critical knowledge fresh and top of mind, ensuring your team operates at peak efficiency. Today's class is impactful, accessible from anywhere, and a bit of fun too, and we're not talking about after-hours pizza either. For training that gets results, turn to todaysclass.com. You know, I'm a big fan of not saying the word training, but saying the word education, continuous education.
Yes, exactly.
We were talking to somebody today, and they said, "Well, you know, Carm, I love your point. We train dogs and athletes.
We educate people.
And we educate people."
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's one of those major language shifts that I'm looking to get sticky inside the industry by saying what we do when we come to an event like this is we come to get educated and to learn new things and to meet people, not to train. Quarterbacks train. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. We just lost the game. Oh, geez.
So did we.
Yeah,
a
so
couple
did we
weeks
in
ago.
Detroit, right?
We're from
So,
Detroit.
See, I was so looking for a Detroit Buffalo. We're from Buffalo,
Yeah,
right?
So were we.
so were
Yeah.
we.
Oh my God. And we've got so many friends from Detroit. We were just like, oh, I can't wait. This is going to happen. You guys are on fire. We're on fire. It's going to be great.
It's going to be another year.
Sorry, everyone in the audience. We had a football digression there.
I don't know about you guys. We're both dog lovers. And I have a good friend.
Yes.
I'm not wildly off track here, but who says, when you work with a dog, one of you is always being trained. Sometimes it's you.
my.
Sometimes it's the dog.
I love that.
Yeah.
Let that sink in, audience. Yeah.
Actually, in Carm's case, it might be that you're being educated
There you
and
go.
the dog is
It's
being trained.
Yeah, right.
I love you, MaryJo. This is great. Wow. Okay. So I think we covered the GWP being phased down. We covered that, didn't we?
There is a couple of fun facts, right, about this. So there's about 60 metric tons, that's a huge amount, of 134A that's being used just for automotive, light-duty automotive service. That's our estimate. There's more than that when you look at heavy-duty and off-road and all that other stuff. But
Wait, 60 metric tons,
6,000 metric tons.
6,000 metric tons of R134 in vehicles today.
No, being used every year for just recharging vehicles.
No.
For service.
6,000 metric tons are being used. That means 6,000 metric tons are leaking, right? It's a huge number. Surprises a lot of people. Here's what that actually means. So will we go from 134A to YF, 1,430 global warming potential, to less than 1, right? That delta, right? You can look at that in the equivalent of CO2. So we know how much emissions are used in ICE vehicles, right? You can go to EPA website. They have some pretty good calculations. On average, what are the vehicles, right, put up in CO2?
Yeah.
And then you can go and see, and of course, electric vehicles are not completely clean yet, right? So they still burn coal to generate electricity, right? They have an average number they use for that. And if you take the difference between the two, it's the amount of equivalent CO2 if we converted electric vehicles to, or we could convert ICE engine vehicles to electric vehicles. It's a big number too. But when we look at that 6,000 metric tons, okay, what is the equivalent of changing that from 134A to YF? It represents the same as about creating 2.7 million electric vehicles from ICE. So swapping that.
Really? The trade
million.
between 2.7 million ICE
Right.
to 2.7 million EVs.
Correct.
That's the delta?
That's the delta that equivalent with the 66,000 metric tons. That's a big deal. That's the equivalent of that on the effect of on the environment. Any clues as how many electric vehicles we sell in the U.S. today? Any guesses? Each year.
2.5 million.
It's 1.3 million.
1.3?
And 2.7 million vehicles is what, in 1 year, if we could change all the 134A over to YF, that's what the equivalent would be.
Oh.
It's a big number.
Well, I guess way too high.
If you wondered, right, what is the effect of this? It's a huge effect. It is an absolutely huge effect on our environment. We're working hard to produce electric vehicles to help the environment and have less, CO2 in the air. This is a big deal.
You read a lot of stuff about EVs and the cost and what it takes from energy production. Do they calculate anything in there about the global cost of creating lithium ion at all? Is it in that number?
I think the EPA takes that into account
They
to
do?
some
Okay.
degree, but I'm not 100%.
It may not be made here in the U.S., but in other places there still needs to be energy
Absolutely.
used to do that. And
I mean, there's energy to make engines, right? There's energy to do that, right? To forge castings and all that stuff. So I'm not saying they're equivalent, but the costs aren't just the costs of driving the car and the emissions that they put out. It is the cost of making everything.
So if I discover, I just can't wait to get home, MaryJo, and find out what my vehicle has, if I'm a 134A or not, and something happens to my thermal management system, am I going to be offered from my shop a chance to retrofit, do you think? Say in the next couple of years? I mean, are we at that point where it is a part number in a catalog and ready to go?
Not exactly today, but that's what we're working towards. And I think that will be maybe by the end of this year, maybe early next year, right? You'll see that. We have to go through this EPA approval.
We have to get our completeness letter from the EPA for SNAP.
A completeness letter.
And then we will move to a SNAP approval. And at that point, yes.
Yeah.
A completeness letter.
So
I don't know why. That sounds interesting to me.
you have to put a lot of stuff together for the EPA.
Oh, I betcha.
Maybe this leads into one of the topics that we talking about. YF is mildly flammable.
Yeah.
134A is considered non-flammable, right? So we had to prove and show to the EPA and to the industry, right? We talked to the industry to make sure that we were all on the same page, that they could be used safely, that YF can be used safely. And a lot of work went into that. And we're very confident. We've had lots of discussion with the EPA. So we think we're on the right track with this.
And in 5 years, it may not be the staple refrigerant.
It may not. That's absolutely right. You don't know what's coming down in the future, and there's a lot of different options. So I hope.
From an environmental standpoint, if I went from 134A to YF, 1, 2, 3, 4, YF, and some new refrigerants came out, I may be happy enough with the state of this particular gas, if you will, refrigerant, than to even worry about another retrofit to something else someday.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I don't know that the YF is going to go away and will need to be retrofitted.
In a short term, yeah.
No.
And so the investment and the focus seems to be on getting vehicles to YF, even though there's experiments to 444, the propane-based, the CO2-based, I hear.
Right. There are some CO2-based cars out there. There's not many. Volkswagen is the main producer of CO2.
Yeah.
And CO2 is not a bad refrigerant. It's used highly effectively in stationary air conditioning or stationary cooling systems, right? It has some drawbacks when you look at automotive stuff. So it's like anything else. It's not ideal. It's not perfect. There's no magic in it, but it has some drawbacks. It struggles a little bit in hotter weather.
So let's talk about this. I just mentioned, it's got me to think. I go into the catalog, I look it up, I find my car, and I want to buy the 1234 YF Retro. This kit that I could end up purchasing from my parts supplier, you think it's going to be different for every car, or it's going to be universal?
No, it'll be universal.
It'll be universal.
Yeah, so the fittings that we're talking about here are the 134A fitting today on your vehicle. It's common. Right?
Yeah.
Every car has exactly the same, not exactly the same fitting, but the way that you connect to it is exactly the same, the dimensions there. So we're really focusing this on professional service. This is not, we're not throwing it out in the field and say, DTYF, right? You just do it
That's smart.
yourself, right?
That's so smart.
Professional service is the right place to do this, right? But it will be a kit that you will be able to use on anything because that fitting is identical.
You'll want the 134A collected. That's
Exactly.
why.
Yes.
No, that's part
No
of it.
matter what's left.
You figured that out. You figured that out.
Yeah.
That is exactly why. If you don't want to mix the two, which you should not do, right? What you want to do is pull the 134A out. Because if it's difficult to get or if it's very expensive, you're going to want to save that. And it's bad for the environment. So you don't want to release it.
But am I going to retrofit a 134A vehicle that works? I'm not.
No,
So if it's not, there may not be any 134A in it.
That's possible. But really, when you start to lose refrigerant, right, this 6,000 metric tons a year, right, just in the U.S., right, that of leaks, right? You don't have to lose all of it to have no air conditioning. You can lose a third of it or maybe a little bit more than that. And your air conditioning starts to feel bad, right? It starts, wow, it's not cold anymore, right? Even in Buffalo.
All right. It was 80 degrees last week. As I jest.
Not in Buffalo, nor Michigan.
No, yeah. Your weather comes our way. I just want you to
One
know
day
that.
later. That's
Yes.
right.
And we're constantly putting a pin in the Detroit voodoo doll every time it comes. So I just want you to know. Do you ever think that the government would one day say every 134A vehicle has got to be moved to 123YF? Now, this is, I'm sorry, a wild thought on my part.
They're already saying that, right? So what they have is a phase down, right? HFCs in general, 134 is an HFC. It's a very high GWP. Most HFCs are, right? And the government has already created a plan to phase down all HFCs, 134 being one of the worst offenders. They haven't said phase out yet, but they have phased it down. And in fact, you cannot use 134A in new cars. Haven't been able to for 3 or 4 years, right? It's already happening, right? And that is the reason you're going to want to change. If your car works great, you don't take your car in to get it serviced, right? And even though most of us want to be, feel we're in favor of the environment, we want to do the right thing, right? Very few people are going to go in and say, I changed my old refrigerant out. But there's usually some left. That could be half or more. So
The average consumer has no clue what we're talking about.
exactly.
The technology specialists that are working on thermal management, or the thermal management specialists, we used to call them air conditioning specialists, right?
Right.
If they don't pay attention, stay current, continuous education, then they're going to be out. We're going to not do the right thing for our consumer. We're going to have to be advocates at our service counters in this trust relationship that we have with the consumer so that they know, yeah, you're just trying to get me to do one of these things. And there's so much going on behind the scenes, be it regulations, be it the retrofitting, the quality, the whatever HFC's things come down. And the consumer may just continue to look at us as, he's just selling me a bill of goods. And it's not. There's this educational piece that I think we have to work with our consumers about.
Absolutely true.
Yes.
And maybe Honeywell has to lead the way. Maybe you need to have, I'm telling Honeywell what to do here. This is interesting.
This is why we're here.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, you need to do ads to help the consumer realize that there's a changing world in hydrofluorocarbons. Mm-hmm. We would like to let you know that the next time your service professional tells you that you may want to do this, it's a good thing.
Very
It is a good thing,
Yes.
right? And it would be premature for us to say, because you can't go out and do it today, right? So that's not the case. And you wouldn't do it if 134A is widely available, if it's cheap, but because it's being phazed down.
Yeah, let's
by
talk
the
about
EPA.
let's talk about that. Remember what happened to R12?
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. Was it $1,000, $2,000 a jug? I think. Whoa.
Yes, very expensive.
I remember back in the day when I was in distribution, we'd have a trailer of R12.
Right.
And if I only saved that, I could own Bitcoin.
Yes.
You could. You should have invested at that time. So it is going to happen that way, right? When the phase down is for production or importing, right, that the U.S. is doing, it will make supplies scarce, and scarcity drives up price, right? And that will be the time when someone says, hey, my air conditioning isn't working. I go to the shop. The shop says, I can't get that. I can't get 134A, but I'm going to give you this new stuff. Going to work just as good.
Okay.
And it's going to take a kit, and we'll make it work for you, and we'll have it back to you right
fine.
in a day. And you'll be fine.
You will be cool.
Absolutely.
Wow. I think we kind of narrowed down, what this whole MAX conference is about. I mean, all this discussion, all the seminars that I've seen, there's a theme here for sure. I just so enjoyed this. It was a tight, concise episode. You guys really know your stuff.
We can talk about, right? YF is not the only alternative, won't be the only alternative to retrofit, right?
Yeah.
I know you've talked to in the past the people from Kerr. They're good people. I know them. And they're offering 456A and 444A, right? These are both for retrofit, but they're not approved by the EPA yet either. So it's competition, right? And competition is good. I don't have any problem with that.
So in your labs, are you working on your own version of something like that?
YF, right?
Oh,
YF.
you're sticking with that, huh?
Well, for the retrofits,
Okay.
absolutely, right. And for future stuff, we have a lot of different things that
You're
we're
working
working
on
on
stuff,
for thermal management systems, for EVs, certainly. And YF is a good choice, right? It is a good choice. As another example, and you don't drive an EV, and neither do I, but I can tell you how it works, right? When EVs got a bad rap for, I lost all my range in cold weather. I live in Buffalo, and it got cold, and I used to be able to drive 250 miles, and now I can only drive 100 miles, right? That's kind of a bad rap. Early EVs were not very efficient, right, as how they made heat. A lot of them made heat with just electric heating, right, what we call a PTC heater. And so in that case, it was not very good. But when you actually experience with a lithium-ion battery, when you experience, the only way they know they have a range reduction is to look on the dash, right? It says, how much range do I have? Well, yesterday, when it was 65 degrees, I had 250 miles. I looked today, it's very cold in Buffalo, and I only got 100. That's their indication. But some of that, in fact, a lot of it, is just the battery itself. Batteries are less efficient, and they have less capability in cold weather. That hurts range.
They were heating themselves while it was sitting there, am I right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. But they also lose efficiency, how they generate electricity or how they use electricity. So there's two parts to it. Certainly the industry needed to get better with heat pumps and better system design. And the second part, though, is that the battery is not as efficient in cold weather. So those are two things. The HVAC system took a bad rap. The thermal management system took a bad rap for that. And things have gotten significantly better, the use of heat pumps and that kind of stuff. So is it as huge a problem as everybody really initially thought? Well, it's certainly better. It's still an issue, and we still want to improve, right? So Honeywell is looking at refrigerants. We're looking at system design. We're looking at a number of things, right, to help with, I guess, this range anxiety in cold weather.
Range anxiety.
Yeah.
Wow.
You guys drive a long way, I'll bet.
Yeah, we do.
So if you had a Tesla or an EV of any kind, right, and you had to go 200 miles.
I'd have to have a planning document.
There you go.
Boy, I was so virgin as it comes to EVs. And Tracy and I were headed down to, I think, Philly on a trip, and we pulled off to a rest stop. And there's all these Tesla chargers. And there's one car parked in front. We go to the restroom, we come back. And my curiosity drew me to go meet this couple that was charging. I'm telling you, man, I was so stupid when I walked up to talk to them. I was embarrassed. After I found out what I wanted to find out, I was embarrassed to walk away, and I'm saying, boy, those were stupid questions. But they were so willing to answer them for you. They have this plugged in, right? And I go over to the charging station, and I'm looking for the credit card slot.
Did they pay by their phone?
Huh?
Did they pay
No,
through
it's
an app
plugged
or-
in. They know it's them.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
and I says, how do they know it's you? And he points to the dashboard. He goes, it's us. They know.
Right.
Duh. And then I said, so what makes you stop here to recharge your Tesla, and how long will you be here? He goes, oh, we planned this before we left. We know all the places we're going to stop. Yeah. And they told me this, Carm, it's a lifestyle, owning an EV.
It is. Most of the early adopters, right, of EVs are very excited about it, doing it, right? So they look forward to things like planning their trip and where can I stop and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I know. So
one of the things that I learned about EVs, we're a little bit off track, but that's fine. Everyone says, well, if you charge at home, it's going to be a lot less expensive than if you charge, right, somewhere in the field, right, someplace.
I would imagine.
But if you're driving someplace and coming back and you can't quite make it back, you stop at a charging station, you don't charge the whole vehicle. You just charge up what you need to get home and then finish charging there.
Back in the day, Bud, you remember, go get $2 worth of gas just so they can go out tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't get more than that, because Dad will fill it up in the morning.
Oh my God, it's so funny. You walk up with $2 and you give it to the guy. They're expecting to at least, do an $8 sale, fill up the tank, right? And you tell them $2.
Absolutely.
That's when we were living on babysitting money or whatever, right? And so plug it in for a bit, get home.
Short time.
I love it.
Spend, I don't know, whatever you spend, and then go plug it.
Hey, this was a blast. Thank you so much, Curtis, Vincent, MaryJo, Vandenbrink from Honeywell. And thanks for Honeywell to sponsor us to be here. Appreciate that.
It is an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure.